Everybody, Mo Bundle here, Real Relationships, Real Revenue. This is our second interview into, it's the final, with Todd Sattersten, my good friend, owner and publisher of Bard Press. He just came out with a new book. It's called this. If you're on video, you see me waving it. It's called The 100 Best Books for Work and Life, What They Say, Why They Matter, and How They Can Help You. And if you, by chance, are dropping in this second of these two shows, we Todd, I think, knew better, but I thought we'd be able to get through all of our big ideas and mapped out which of the 100 are the most effective and the most important for business development. I sort of thought we'd be able to get through all of them in one show. I did not do the math. So we needed a part two. But if you're dropping into this one, know that we've already covered how to align your growth and your business development and all the actions you're going to take with your purpose in life. We talked about the science behind not only that you can improve, but how do you improve at the fastest rate? We talked about how to set goals in the proper way, how to think about relationships. And that's where we got to, wow, it's time to just hit the clapperboard and say, all right, it's time. We need to make this too. And so here we are in the second one. And what we're going to talk about in this one, which I think is we're just going to pick up the baton right from great relationships and being vulnerable, being connected with others. And we're going to drop right into generosity. We're going to move into positive influence. And we're going to finish up this one with 6 different books on implementations about habits. How do you have the right focus? How do you coach others to scale across your team? Some really good stuff is coming today. Todd, any color you want to add about what we're going to cover?
No, I think that, again, what I appreciate about what we're doing in these interviews, Mo, is we're talking about how does this stuff apply to BD? How does it apply to business development? And so if folks are listening to these, keep that lens on, because I think what we're trying to do is give you pieces that fit into parts that I'm not sure you might have even thought that thing that maybe you read in this book that, you know grit. You've probably read Angela Duckworth's Worth. You maybe have not connected that thing to this thing. You go, oh, there's more to it. I mean, I think that's really the whole point of the book. Is what I wanted to do is connect professional pursuits and personal pursuits, and what's the best thinking on all of those so we can get better at all the things that are important to us.
Yeah. And when you drop into the book, just to get 2, 3, 4 pages on the best book on that topic ever and your summary of it. And other thing I like about the book, Todd, just to say this out loud, is like how each summary is a little bit different. You didn't have this rote, robotic way of going about it. There's certainly a common format that feels familiar each time, but this is a book that you can just read all the way through. This is a book that you can just say, you know what, I need a primer or a reminder on a very specific thing. And the way you've laid it out is you can look at the books by the topic. You can look at it by title. I mean, you can find what you want. So it's just really well done. So, okay. Just like all Bard Press books, Todd, they're all fantastic.
Thank you, Mo.
All of them. As I talk about you, as I talk about me, just joking.
Yes. No, I mean, and Mo, let me say one more thing. I've heard people starting to use it as a part of their morning ritual of just like, hey, what's something I'm maybe working on today where could I drop in and in 3 minutes have read something that just might refresh my thinking on a particular topic. And if you did that over 3 months, you'd be through the whole book. If you just did that one review a morning. So I love the different ways that people are, even that I didn't even think of, that people are already using the book. So it's really awesome.
Yeah. No, that makes total sense because it's a fast read. Okay, so let's drop into generosity. Our first book here is Give and Take. I'm going to take the lead on it. You're going to sweep behind me. And my favorite part about Give and Take by Adam Grant, all of Adam Grant's stuff is great. Like, he just only does high quality work. This is my favorite book. It's his first. And in particular, the entire book, it's all great. I love, and I might get the chapter number wrong, but I'm 99% sure it's chapter 4. And it's where he describes a very specific study where they looked at givers, takers, and in the middle, matchers. And the general definitions were givers gave without any expectation of anything in return. Takers tried to get everybody to do their work for them. And matchers were sort of like, I'll do this for you if you do that for me. Sort of a tit for tat. Every single interaction was like an exchange. Well, we'll have to make a deal. And, they looked at across all domains, and it turned out, or the hypothesis was, givers would win and they would be the best and the most happiest and the most successful and all these things. But it didn't turn out to be true. A big chunk of the givers were the most successful, and then matchers, and then takers, and then a big chunk of the givers at the bottom. So he had to do further studies and research to figure out what, I like saying it this way, what gives with givers? Why are half the very most productive and the very least productive? And what they found there is that it was the difference was the folks who had the ability to say no, so to choose when they were going to give, and also scaled their give to the decide of to what they think the outcome might be for them. So they had just a little bit of selfishness, didn't say yes to everything, number one. And if they did say yes to something, they would scale, is this a 15-minute investment or a 15-hour investment, and then make the choice based on what might happen for them. Still no strings attached. And I'll finish with this, Todd, and skip to you, is the folks who didn't do that, you almost have to paint the opposite picture, is where the givers who were at the bottom of the heap said yes to everything, said yes to however the request came into them. So no yes or no and no scaling. And they tend, and these are Adam's words, which I thought were just so well said, those people tend to get burned or burn out. So how does that apply to BD? I'm actually going to kick to you to that because I've been talking too much. But hey, we wrote Give to Go together and probably 20 or 25 revisions by chapter. So
Yeah. So first of all, if you're listening and you know Mo's work, it's based on generosity. Like that's at the core of it. Like when you and I started working together, I said, Mo, what matters the most? You said relationships. Like I just want to teach people that relationships are the most important thing. And I said, okay, well, what about relationships? What am I trying to engage in when I connect with that? And you said it's about giving. And so of course that led us right to Give to Grow. Like it wasn't a hard jump to come to that. So if you're listening to Mo's work, you already know that that's a piece that's really important. And I love that Adam Grant so well researched the fact that that's important. So I love your piece around that there's nuance and connection of how I give. The other one, which sits at the front of the book, and it's the story that everyone loves to tell, is that giving takes longer. Giving takes longer. Takers are the rabbits that, come out of the gate. They gain lots of things very quickly because what do? They marshal up all the resources. They kind of suck up all the attention in the room. They suck up all the awareness. But what is found is that I think it was medical students that they tracked this in, is that first year takers are actually the best performers, but it's actually fourth year givers that actually then end up outperforming the folks who were takers. So again, that nuance of sometimes we're in a hurry. Like sometimes we're like, I need that next deal. Like I've got to sign 3 clients to make this thing work for the stuff I'm trying to do and the goals that I have. And sometimes that giving piece, it's just a practice that takes longer. I mean, what do you tell to people when they kind of maybe complain a bit about how that process just does take longer?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. I'm just always like, play the long game. What's the right thing for 10 years from now? Our mutual friend Tim Grahl has a great line of, what can you do today that helps your future self? And I think when we think about exponential growth, why does investing in the stock market work great? Well, it might be up or down this day or even this year, but over 10 years, we can bet that the stock market's going to outperform cash or not doing anything with your money.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's the same thing with relationships. And I'm so glad I had forgotten that part about how takers actually come out of the gate faster. And that could be confusing to people because they could think, oh, wow, so-and-so is doing really great. I need to do what they're doing. We both started at the same time. And that could be super confusing. But man, I put all the money on the table that somebody that's a giver, and they're a strategic giver in the way that Grant found sort of that top of heap folks. I'd put my money on those kind of folks all day long.
I like that.
I think just to land the plane on that, and we'll move on to our next book, is then I think what the audience can think about is Am I what we call a strategic giver? I think Adam called them successful givers in the book. I like the word strategic giver. And so I think we can audit ourselves on how can we be more of a strategic giver? Meaning, it's just so easy to say yes to that internal project from our boss without a yes or no filter or not scaling up. Yes, but could I oversee it and give it to somebody else? Yes, but could I do it next quarter, not this quarter? Yes, but. So if we want to have that yes or no filter and we want to scale things. On the external side of the fence, I think the audit could be or the assessment we could think about ourselves is, who are my most important potential clients over the next 5 years? And how am I allocating my giving? Am I giving them enough? Am I getting other people a lot just because I know them well, or proximity, or I'm already working with them? So I think we can just, from time to time, maybe like once a quarter, take a step back and say, what am I saying yes and no to? And am I allocating my time, my most precious resource, in the way that'll have the best long-term payoff? Todd, any thoughts on that?
I think that the audit of did you, like sometimes it's like, did you engage in a set of activities during this time frame that was value add for someone else? Like, can you literally list those? I know it sounds really like, I think you're almost giving them the 201 course there. The 101 course is, can you think of the set of things? Do you have a set of things that are really easy to give? Like, that's a big deal in your methodology. Do
Yeah,
you have a
right.
set of things? It starts there. Probably if you don't, then think about how much harder it is for you in every situation to go, well, what could I do with this person? And what can I do with that prospect? And how do I renew something with this client? I think until you have a set of things that you can be generous with, and you don't feel like you're hurting yourself by doing it, that you're probably going to be slow to do it. So I would just add that additional piece.
Great job. So I'm going to say one more thing on this book because it's so good, but we're going to need a third episode. I was reminded recently, because we did a webinar that was a lot of fun, and I invited like 4 of my favorite clients ever. I'll skip over. We did a game show format. It was really a riot. But anyway, I was reminded by one of our top consulting firm clients a couple years ago. They ran around their entire, it was a specific functional area, but like, I don't know, 4 or 5,000 consultants in that area, so big. And they ran around and they documented every single give to get, which is, of course, in our vernacular, our methodology, like, what is the bite-sized, precise give that we can give strategically that we think would deepen the relationship and at a high percentage lead to more work. And they documented all those, and they created a microsite on their in their internal servers that had, these are the top 80 or whatever give to gets that you can offer without even asking, and this is who it's for, and this is what they get, and this is what the benefit is, and this is how long it takes, and here's the playbook on how to do it. And they put that all in one place. And man, what a great idea. It unleashed a ton of momentum in the marketplace, because how I took your idea was like, hey, individually, we got to figure out what these are. And that's true. What I'm trying to say is also, as an organization, if people do this, that kind of thing, incredible idea. All right, let's move on to our next book on generosity. This is one I haven't read. So tell us about Setting the Table.
So Setting the Table is by Danny Meyer. He's the famous restaurateur in New York City. If you've been to Union Square Cafe, it's probably his most famous. But frankly, if you've been to Shake Shack, that's actually the more famous now. But his original restaurant in the basement, just off Union Square. I've always loved Danny Meyer restaurants. I've been always amazed and wondered how they've trained their staff. I remember having this experience of being with, at that time, my boss, and we'd finished dinner, we'd had a drink, we were kind of looking at each other a little bit, and we kind of said to each other, like, should we have another beer? Is it, I don't know. And the server came into our kind of loop of tables, turns to us and just says, I feel you. Walks away and comes back with the 2 beers. We didn't say one word to him, or he heard us. Like, it was the most like goosebump magical experience I think I've ever had in a restaurant. And I was like, how did they do it? Is there cameras? Is there a microphone under the table? Because it's such hospitality based. Like, it was just the right moment to be like, yeah, that's like, That was, of course, the next thing. His definition when he talks about it is he says, service is the technical delivery of the product, right? Hello, professional service people, right? All of us, that delivery of the product is service, but hospitality is how the delivery makes someone feel.
Ooh,
I love that,
I
right?
like that too. It's fantastic.
How does that person feel in the delivery of the service, right? And we know the difference, don't we? Like, we know the difference when, like, Mo, you're going to need to remind me of when you're on a call with someone, you need to be prepared for it. It's like you give me 2 or 3 things that you need to be ready for with the client. Tell me what those 3 things are, because I think it ties directly to this concept of, I think, hospitality.
Oh gosh, I think you might have stumped me. I guess at a super high level, and I'm like really like synthesizing how we prepare for meetings, but at a really high level, we want to bring great ideas and questions. We want to bring some kind of technical expertise and insight. We want to have some type of framework or process, and we want to have some kind of relationship building. Like it could be making just finding commonalities or no, figuring out ahead of time on LinkedIn, who do we know in common? And one of the things we try to do, we talk a lot about internally at Big, is that person at the end of the call should feel a little bit more uplifted than they were at the beginning of the call. I know that was a whole morass of things, but that's sort
No,
of
but
how I think
Mo,
about it.
I think what it is I think there's even a shorthand that I'm thinking of. So let's see if I have it right. I think you tell someone that when you're working with a client that you know well, you should be ready that there's some situations where they're going to ask for help, right? They're going to say, hey, I'm working on this thing. What's my next best thing to do? And you need to be ready there with, like, here's the next steps to go forward. I think the other one you sometimes say is you need to be ready to give them a hug. Like that there
Oh,
may
I
be
know
a
what you're
point in
talking about
time,
now. Yes, yes, yes,
right?
yes.
There
Yep.
may be a point in time where they show up to the call and they're just like, you won't believe it just happened. The thing we were both working on, the budget got pulled. I'm trying to figure out where else we could get it from. I'm not even sure what to do, but I wanted to tell you, and what a great client relationship that you could talk about that. But it's help, it's hug. Is there another one? Or are those the
Yeah,
two?
yeah. No, there were 3. It was sort of like brainstorming, like
Yeah.
just general problem solving, but not necessarily in your expertise.
Hmm.
And so, like, to your point, so often we can, as experts, we can want to go to every single call and be a hammer looking for a nail. Like, they must need our technical expertise. And that is one way, right? But the
Yes.
other two, like, they just need somebody outside that they trust that they can talk to, or somebody outside that they can just brainstorm about a sticky situation. But like we said, possibly not even in your area, but you're just a good thinker. They trust you. You're safe. All those things. Those other two hospitality like things like can actually add more value to them than your technical expertise. And most people aren't looking for that.
Yeah, I think I'm amazed. I think one of the things that I think about a lot in connection to your work now that I didn't see at the beginning is we're certainly working with the client on the business that they're in to improve some outcome. But let us not miss the fact that we're also working with a person who also has goals. They have places that they want to go with their career. And we can do is just as much to help and make both of those things, I think, happen for that person. And understanding what both of those things are, I think, are really, really important. And again, sometimes we're just like, I'm just going to deliver the thing. And it's XYZ. And we have the document. And we know exactly what the deliverables are. But there's so much more to what that looks like, I think, if we do it well.
Yeah. Yeah. I
Yeah.
love it. Well, I think what's interesting about that one is your exact line of like hospitality is how it makes them feel. And for us all to think about whether it's the delivery of our work, the doing of the work, or relationship, business development, the winning of the work, thinking about how somebody felt after an experience is just as important as what they learned or what was explained technically or whatever.
So to close this one, I'm just going to read the quote from the book that I used in the 100 Best. And here's what he says. See if this doesn't tie all these things together that we're trying to do here. So Danny says, I don't believe that the principle of erring on the side of generosity is inherently superior to the principle of fiercely protecting yourself in order to make as much money as possible. but generosity is the way I choose to do business in my restaurants. And so far, it has always contributed mightily to our success. Mic drop, book drop.
Yeah, I love it.
Yeah.
Love it. I could not agree more. Okay, next book, Influence by Bob Cialdini. So I'll take the lead on this one. And this is tough, Todd, because I could talk about this book for we've given 1 hour keynotes on this. There's so much to cover that I've got to be brief. This book reads a little like a textbook. Everybody's got to know that going into it. I mean, he's a researcher. He's synthesizing not only his research, but every other important study that he's ever run across. And he found the 6 most influential things in the human mind. Somebody told me once, it was somebody we both know. I know that for certain. I can't remember who it was, but they said, yeah, something isn't really powerful unless it can be used. Something's not a superpower unless it can be used for evil. So that's pretty cool. I mean, you can have somebody with superpowers in a comic book and they're either good or evil. But some things like meta-human about them. And influence is one of those things. So I like to put the word positive in front of it, positive influence, just so people don't actually just take the word influence and assume it's good or bad, because it actually can be either. I like to say put positive in front of it so that when you and I talk about this stuff, with the assumption is every single thing is done in a way that's beneficial to all. It just helps us all accomplish goals together as opposed to manipulation, which it could take. Just any thoughts on that right out of the gate?
Mo, the way I think about it is I always think about what's the intention that you're bringing. So if you decide to use any one of the techniques that Cialdini brings, if you're trying to fool someone, if you're trying to trick someone into some action, I think that's when you're bringing poor intention. I think that's when you're bringing, I don't think people would like me to use the word evil, but you're not coming from the right place. You're certainly not coming from a place of generosity. If we're going to use what we just talked about, you're coming from a place of, I'm looking for something, I'm looking out for me. And so I always think, what's the intention I'm bringing? Because there's a lot of times we do use some of these and we are trying to move a project forward. Then the question is, are we doing it with a positive intention, like you're saying? And that's always my filter. If I'm writing copy and I'm trying, sometimes I'm using one of these techniques to try to encourage someone to click on a button. Is it what perspective am I bringing it from? This always just feels really important to me.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. So let's do this. Let's do a sprint through the 6, the top 6 things that he found. These are chapters in the book that are influential to the human mind. All of it's done within the frame that we just shared. And I'm going to do them in a different order than is in the book, because this is how I think about it. First of all, when it comes to business development, the number one thing people have to think about, I think, is reciprocity. That's tied to generosity that triggers that, because it's the one of the 6 that can get you all of the other, it can get all other 5. It's the lead, it's the master key, I think, to opening up all the other elements of positive influence. So here's what I mean. Reciprocity. Dennis Reagan, key researcher, he found that people want to repay those that give to them. So by giving first in all the ways we just talked about, it's incredibly powerful, because everybody, even if they don't accept the gift, even they feel that what Cialdini's research, he's quoting Reagan on this and a lot of others, they tend to want to repay. Well, what happens when we give first? Let's say that we can offer this give to get, like we talked about before. It's a half-day workshop that we're going to have our team with the client team. We've never worked with them before, and we all get to work together. There's 9 of us in a room, 4 of us, 5 of them, whatever. And we're going to actually just roll up our sleeves and start helping them. What happens after that? Well, we get a bunch of time with them. That's what unlocks the other 5. The next one, likability. People do business with people they like. Number one correlation to likability is commonality. Jerry Berger. So the researcher there, we're going to stumble into commonality. We're going to build up likability if we have more time with them. That's the second one. Scarcity. People value things that there is less of that thing. Our gift of time, if we're an expert, is extremely valuable. Everybody knows, and if they don't, we can tell them nicely that we're busy or we're slammed or we're, lots is going on, people are going to value that time with us even more. The next one, authority. People tend to trust authorities, especially in times of stress. Well, if we're rolling up our sleeves and helping them, we are becoming the authority figure. We come in from the outside, we can help them solve this problem. They're going to trust us. And then the last two, social proof. What's interesting about giving first with social proof is, well, first of all, social proof is we tend to feel comfortable doing things that others are doing. So in our scenario, 5 of us, 5 of them, if we've blown all 5 away, it gets really easy to engage us and sign contracts and all that. Whereas if we only worked with one person, they've got to carry the water to convince others. Really hard to do. So we want to construct experiences that have all the decision makers in the room, all the influential people. And then our last one, commitment and consistency. That was his only influential factor that had 2 things, commitment and consistency. And what it basically said is that we tend to keep going down roads that we start down because we want to be consistent. The idea there is if the other team accepts the offer of generosity, they start working with us. Doesn't even matter if it's paid or not. That starts down a road, and it's easy to spend some time at the end of that half-day workshop, talk about next steps, and we're just teed up for success. I'll finish with this, Todd, and over to you is, if we do this with positive intent, like we've talked about, doing what the example I just shared is the only thing I've ever seen in my life that can take all 6 of these positive influential levers and pull them all in your favor, done so in a way that feels great because you're giving first. And Cialdini said, any of these 6 is unbelievably powerful. And here's this one move that could, if you do it right, can actually get all 6. That's why people can get 80, 90+% success rates on this, is because it feels great, everybody benefits, and it's massively positively influential. Over to you.
Yeah, I think a couple of things that come to mind. What's interesting with Cialdini's newest research and in the latest book, Mo, he actually pulls out commonality as its own principle.
Oh, he did? I didn't even know that. Tell me more.
Yeah. So he calls it unity. That's the word that he uses for it. And it's all the things that you said, which is the more we identify with another group, the more we have the ability to influence that. So, so the example I give actually in the review is he just happens to mention in the book somewhere that he's a Green Bay Packers fan. I am a lifelong, dyed to the skin and bone Green Bay Packers fan. It's like, oh my God, I've got something in common with Bob now. I didn't even know this. Like, I want to write him now and tell him, how do you think the season's going? So unity is a new piece in there because of how important he's found that. So I think that's one thing I would say. Second thing I'd say is I want to give an example of, I think, scarcity in a way that is positive. And you and I both know this, but Bard Press, we only do 1 book a year. I don't know how much more scarce you could be. Maybe doing only 1 book every 5 years or something might be the only way we could be more scarce. Once a decade, it's not the best business model. But our ability to say, hey, listen, we focus all of our work and time on a single author and the impact that has on their book, on their business, it's remarkable. That, just saying that, the minute I say we only do 1 book a year, it's immediate reaction to it. And frankly, it's a scarcity reaction. I think it's a positive scarcity reaction. I'm not doing it because I'm trying to be some evil scientist to convince you that we're something different, but it's like we've built a business model around that, and scarcity is a really important piece. Here's my last one. What I love is you have a couple of ways that you actually tell people to, it's a version of, would it be helpful if I did X? So that's something, again, this generosity piece that we're talking about, but you've even modified them a little bit to use 2 of his principles. So maybe I can throw it back to you and you could talk about, hey, here's a way you could use it literally in a meeting.
Yeah. Yeah. This is neat because we're blending a couple of his things. What is commitment? So suggesting a next step and leaving time to discuss it in any meeting is really important because that gets that commitment, maybe even more. But how do you do that? How do you say it? Well, anybody who's been around our programs knows that we love the phrase, would it be helpful if? That's I probably use that one more than anything else. But two others that are a click below that I will use, they're slightly more formal, so I don't use them all the time, but they're so powerful. One is, again, we're talking about next steps at this point is the context. So we've got an idea and we want to suggest the idea. Todd, can I go backwards and say what not to say?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. No, I think that you give us the what to say, so or the start of it. So
The start of it.
Where would someone get into trouble thinking their way towards these concepts and what I might almost like jamming them in the wrong way? Like,
Yeah.
where would I get in trouble?
Well, yeah, let's do that. So here's what not to say. Then we'll come back. We'll circle back to what to say. So what not to say. I actually avoid we'd be happy to. And it's not bad necessarily. I wouldn't say it's a huge negative. The problem with we'd be happy to then make the offer is it sounds like it's no big deal. It's taking your scarcity dial and it's just taking it to zero. When in reality, most professionals are slammed. They're really busy. They're working 2,500, 3,000, 3,500 hours a year or whatever. Anything they offer a prospect is probably going to be nights and weekends work. And so we'd be happy to. So they're going to climb this mountain for the thing that they offer, but they're making it seem like it's no big deal because they want to show that they're a nice person. The problem is they're not getting any credit for it because it sounded easy. It just sounded easy. So I would avoid that one. So we'd be happy to, I just don't think is really strong. Even less desirable way of saying things is it's no big deal for us to do. And I no problem. We'd be happy. I think that's actually the weakest because that almost says it's easy, it's not scarce, and it'd be very unlikely those are even true. And I think people are trying to come across as nice, but it actually diminishes the value of the thing that we're offering. So
Yeah, I think just on
avoid
that
those.
one is I don't think there's a piece of generosity actually I think missing from it.
Oh, why do you say that?
When someone just says, "Hey, it's no big deal," well, like you do it for everybody. Like
Yeah.
it may sound like, yes, I can help. Yes, this is something we do all the time. But I think there's something almost like you said right at the end there's a value piece missing. I think generosity, there is a quality of value to it. I'm not being generous if I'm doing something that's easy, that's always possible. That's
Yeah.
does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. I like that. I think you're exactly right. So, okay, so let's flip back to the two things you can say. So we've got those are on the bad side of the ledger. On the good side of the ledger is would it be helpful if we covered that. The next one in the line for me is what most of our clients do next is blank. I really like one. So that's like social proof. It's just piling on the social proof. Now, again, we only say if it's true, but if we've got something that's true, that makes it really easy for them to say yes. And they're also a bit curious about what is it? Most people do that. What is it? I think that's a really strong way to suggest a next step. And then the last one, I probably personally use this to least, but man, it is really powerful. It is what I'd recommend we do next is blank. Really strong. Now you're dialing up the authority meter. You're saying, I am the authority. You could say we. That's a little hard to do off the cuff because you had to talk about it. But if there is a team meeting that prepares some options, and then you'd be in the meeting, you're talking through that, you could say we. If it's true, you do it. What's beautiful about that one is I'll usually use that phrase. Let's say we're talking with a client, a prospect. Let's say there's 5 people on their side, and it's really clear they're not all aligned. This can happen a lot because we might even be proposing some things they never thought about before. They're like, well, that might work, or maybe this, maybe we should do that. If you need something that's a little stronger, that's just going to slice through all the clutter and get right to the point, that's when I'll usually use, you know what? I know we've only got 5 minutes left. There's a lot of things we could do here. Let me just tell you, given what I heard today, what I would do is X. And I just throw it down because that is generous. It's being helpful. It gives people something to react to. And it can move things forward faster.
Yeah, I also think about, you've also told me that there's just some environments, some corporate environments, corporate cultures
Yeah.
that are going to react better to, sometimes they want someone to show up with authority. This is
Yeah.
the next thing that I think we need to do. There's sometimes that, hey, I want to hear, I want to feel better because there's lots of people who have done it. So I think also, sort of knowing the prospect that you're talking to can also influence how you might approach that.
Yep. I love it. Okay. Let's go on to implementation. I want to talk about habits. You're up first. Good habits, bad habits.
So I think if we haven't gone through a habits revolution in the last decade, when you look at the kinds of books and the kind of influence, the number of books they've sold, the kind of influence I think it's had on just how people talk about their work and what they need to be good at and how it is that we make progress on the things that are important to us. And I think a lot of that was fueled with primary research in the early 2000s, that changed our view of how habits even got formed. Wendy Wood, Good Habits, Bad Habits is her book. She was one of the original researchers. And the first thing I always think about from her research is the idea that you can't see the habits that you have. Like there's no way in your conscious mind that you can point to the spot in your head where you go, oh, when I see this trigger, I then do these next three things. The best example I can think of this for me is I notice very consciously now that if my phone is anywhere within my visual range, the possibility that I'm going to pick it up probably goes up tenfold. I'm not exaggerating that. If I cover it up with something, literally just take it out of my field of view, it drops dramatically. And I've used that as a hack because I know that my brain's just like, oh, I need that because I need to do this thing. And suddenly the minute you go to pick up the phone, think of all the habits that kick in of the next thing I need to go get. So what she says is that you doing something once is a decision. You're saying, oh, I'm going to do this thing, it's a decision. But anywhere between 3 and 5 times in repetition that you've done something, the habit circuitry in your brain starts to activate. That's remarkable to me that it happens that quickly. And that we do it because our brain literally takes less energy to that's why it works. That's why the brain wants it. We need that circuitry or else we'd have a hard time navigating the world. The closing quote that I really love from the book, it's towards the end of the book, is, given stress, given priorities, I think there's one more. I'm just going to quote from the book again here. Given stress, tiredness, distraction, or lack of ability, the balance always goes to habits. We're always going to lean into habits. So, and she just says, pick good habits. Like, make sure you've picked good ones. Make sure you develop good ones because that's what we're going to end up doing. So I think the connection back to you is you so often are telling people, gosh, just build the habit. Find the spot. I can't remember. I feel like there's a point in Grow Big training where you're like, open the calendar and I need you to find the spot right now when you're going to do this because I've got to get you doing this for the next 3 or 4 or 5 weeks so you start building the habit to build good business development skills. Am I on the right track there? Like tie it back to the BD work that we're trying to do.
Yeah, exactly. No, this is great. Well, I think if I had to pick three levels where there should be a habit, it would be one, quarterly, what am I going to plan? What are my priorities? And I love quarterly, and our mutual friend Searle loves quarterly because there's a lot of business annual plannings. There's the annual partner plan, there's the annual practice group plan, a product or offering, whatever. And that makes sense. Annual is a big chunk of the world that moves in annual. And we probably need to do that for business reasons. I do an annual review and things like that. But the problem with annual is as you set your goals, it can seem like you've got infinite time to reach them. So once we get to the first level, I think is super important. If I never did annual planning and only did quarterly, I'd be fine. If you do annual planning, you don't do quarterly, you can go a half a year without really prioritizing. So that's why I love quarterly. Anyway, so quarterly is the first level, and that's what are my big priorities? What clients am I going to invest in? What projects internally, externally do I want to focus on? What are the big priorities? The second level is weekly. What's important about weekly is our brains are trained in weeks. Like it's a totally man-made thing, but by the time you're not even in grade school and you understand what the weekend feels like versus the week. You understand what Friday night feels like at home versus Monday morning, totally different feelings. So we've experienced that weekly rhythm so much that it's locked. So what we want to do there is we want to say, what are 3 big things I'm going to do in the next week? And big is serious. Like, what are the big impact? How can I write them so they're in my control? And G is growth oriented. What are 3 big things that are my most important for the week? And then daily is our third rhythm. I think that's important just because the sun goes up, the sun goes down, we sleep, we reset, we synthesize, we get a new fresh start every day we actually wake up. And that's just a glorious moment. And the habit I like there is picking the things I'm going to focus on the night before. And the reason I don't wait till the next morning is there's just something about your subconscious just starts working on stuff. What's the phone call I'm going to make? How am I going to say it? What's the email I need to write? And then when I get to my desk or get in, whatever I start with, like, I'm just ready to go. And I've already I'm just I'm parked downhill. So anyway, I like those 3 rhythms for business development. Your thoughts?
Yeah, no, I mean, what I hear in each one of those, in particular, when you get to the weekly and the daily, it's just habitual patterns that we built, right? That our brain can recognize those things in those time frames. And yeah, I think that's the short answer on that.
Yeah. Yeah. And, it gets to focusing on inputs or actions versus outcomes or results. Like, that's important. Like, there's so many good things that happen with all those. Okay. Tiny habits. Is that BJ Fogg? You're going to
It
lead
is
this one,
BJ
right?
Fogg.
Yeah.
And I think my advice to anyone here is, I think BJ Fogg has figured out the simplest, most effective way to describe both how habits work and how to form them and frankly unform them. Like, how do I break habits? And it's simple. Like, he literally has almost an equation that says you need a trigger. Don't try to form a habit without having something else you can attach it to, right? So like you said, sun coming up, sun going down, I'm having lunch. The first thing I'm going to do after lunch is X, right? So how do I build the trigger? The second is I need to build the simplest action possible. Like, what's the smallest possible thing I can do? The example I love that we both used in Give to Grow is chapter 6 is 2 pages. And basically we just say, pick up your phone, think of someone you haven't reached out to, and write them a message. And you always say, if it's longer than 50 words, it's going to fall off the page of your phone. Have it be 50 words. Send it now. Like BJ Fogg says, if you're trying to build a flossing routine, like to floss your teeth, floss one tooth. Like, make it be the smallest possible thing that you could do. So I think for BD, I always think, what's the smallest possible thing I could do? It would be write a text and say, how are you doing today? Like, you probably have 7 more scripts you could give me on that, Mo, but like, that's it. The last one is, after you've done the smallest possible action, it's, can you find a way to celebrate that action? Like, what's the thing you say, man, that was great. I'm so glad I did that, to connect again the positive emotion so that I'm setting myself up next time for more success. If there's any book on how habits form and what the process is, I just think he does it the best. And that's why it's in the 100 best.
Yeah. That's cool. That's cool. And let me comment on the celebrate the action. We have so many highly analytical people that I was using that framework and I was using the exact words that he and other researchers use, which is celebrate. And it can be a turnoff for people. And I think they just don't understand the definition. What we're talking about here is not some big, huge celebration, like all the way up to retirement party levels, because you sent one email. All you have to do is just take a moment, just do something selfish for yourself that you usually don't do. Check your fantasy football scores or look out the window, stare at a tree, take a 5-minute walk outside. And you can scale up the celebration or scale it down to what the effort was or how big a deal it was, but it doesn't have to be much. I love the way you said it. You're just attaching a little positive emotion in your brain to the effort, the thing that you did. And you just do that over and over again, and you've got a faster path or a higher success to be able to get it done.
Yeah. And I think you could then tie that to progress principle. If you just have a tracker could be a really great way just to be like, Oh my gosh, the famous Jerry Seinfeld calendar that he would put an X on the calendar for every day he wrote a joke. And that was his way of creating that small celebratory point of like, look at this
Yep.
string of things that I've done. So Tiny Habits. Check it out. I think it's a great book.
Okay, so perfect transition to our next one. The pay-per-click method I learned from James Clear, which what he said is if you've got something you do, one way you can celebrate your success is to have a bowl of paper clips for it with or pennies or something that has the number of things that you need to do. And when you do the thing, you move it over. And there's something about that tactile motion, which I think is really neat. So shout out to James Clear. And our next book is Atomic Habits by James Clear. So I have to tell you a funny story. I got introduced to James because we have the same literary agent, and Snowball System was coming out within 2 or 3 weeks or something of Atomic Habits. Well, a mutual friend that we also knew connected us. I wanted to learn how he had done some things like his email list and blogging because he was way ahead of me in that. And he wanted to learn from me, like, how are you doing these corporate sales? You've got this, how are you doing bulk books? I'm thinking about it, but I don't know how. So we had a couple calls and got to know each other that way. So I was actually super excited about the book when it came out. I don't know. I just felt like it was going to be huge. And so Todd, I never told you this, I don't think. I wanted to be the first reviewer of Atomic Habits on Amazon. I don't know why. I just liked James and he helped me and I wanted to be the first.
Sure.
So I'm not joking. You know how your brain can like tell time? I had this in my mind that I was going to do this. And my eyes, the Monday night, Tuesday morning when
Right.
Atomic Habits came out, I can remember laying in bed and my eyes just opened up immediately. And I already had written I didn't set an alarm. I'd already written the review like in a Word document because I thought I'm going to slide this in. And it was like 11:56 a.m. I was like, unbelievable. Like, because I felt weird that I was even doing this and I never told anybody. I didn't even tell my wife, Becky. But when I woke up, eyes wide open, like I just slammed a shot of espresso, I was awake and I'd like 4 minutes. And I quietly got up. Like I was a little embarrassed and I didn't want to wake the dog up and stuff. So I tiptoe in the kitchen. I had left my laptop out. I wasn't planning on doing this, but like here it is. But I wasn't. So I opened up and I copied and pasted. And I was ready. I was ready to write the review. Actually, I never pasted. It wasn't available because it's Pacific time because that's where Amazon is. So I was like, I'm not going to wait up for 3 hours or whatever it is.
Right.
So then
right.
I just slumped back to my bed. I went to sleep and I was like, oh, well, and I woke up the next day and I did do it first thing in the morning at 7 a.m. or 6:30 or whatever. But I think it was like second or third. So I was
Wow,
almost.
that's like it's sad, like
first.
multiple ways, Mo. And now everyone
know.
knows.
Everybody knows I was like
Now everybody
third.
knows about it.
And I probably was third out of like a million. Like that's
Right.
pretty good.
Right. No, it's true. I forget. I think I don't even want to guess how many. I'll bet you he's in 6 figures on Amazon reviews. So to think
Oh,
you're
yeah.
at the start,
Yeah.
and man, if you were still that person who like everyone had said most helpful review, and you're still at the top after all these years, that'd be awesome.
Yeah, I'm not.
We could tell people about the book, and so what I'm gonna do is here's what's interesting.
Whatever. If
Here's
you want
what's
to do that,
interesting
go ahead.
about so many of the books in the 100 best. And it's this, sometimes they're giving conflicting advice. And part of our work as we're reading these books is to sort through, like, in what situations is that book true? And are there other situations that that's true and that both of them are probably truths that we should both hold? But here's my example of this. It actually ties a little bit to your story. Everyone, how does James say it? James says, everyone has the same goals. Everyone has the same goals. 80% of Americans want to write a book, right? It's not the goal that is going to get you to the place that you want to go. It's actually going to be the habit that you're going to build that's actually going to get you to the goal. And so he thinks goals are sometimes dangerous. They're sometimes actually short-sighted. They can get us into trouble. It's actually the habits that we build, the actions that we take, the things that make it really easy to do the things that we want to, that gets us to our goals. So I think sometimes that can sound like conflicting advice versus the importance that we've heard about goal setting allows people to get further, get faster, like all the things you hear of the research on the importance of goals. But James actually like pours a whole wet blanket over the goal setting methodology and research and says habits, 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 habits. He would go as far as say goals inhibit long-term success. Goals inhibit long-term success because we get to the place and we're like, hey, I'm done. I did the thing. Where he says habits allow for continual process improvement. So tie that piece into like, how does that tie to how you talk to clients? Because again, what we were just talking about, how important goals are, whether it's little ones, like I'm going to be the first person to write the review, or those quarterly reviews that I'm trying to do the biggest impact pieces, right? Like both of those pieces are really important.
Yeah.
Like, how do I connect those?
I have a real strong view of this. And by the way, good work trying to tie my story into something that actually is meaningful, because there's nothing there. It's just a funny story. So there's no meaning to it at all. But every, it's sort of like Tom Bombadil in Lord of the Rings. Like, what was he doing? It doesn't matter. And Tolkien actually said every story needs some random thing that doesn't really fit, but it was just some like side thing. I think that's funny.
You need the MacGuffin. And your MacGuffin that morning was, I'm going to be the first person to write the review. I get it. It's big things and small things.
It's funny. Yeah, I tend to think of it this way. And I think James is right. I think Edwin Locke is right, who's probably the most prominent goal researcher of all time. I see goals as being important because it sets the destination and the priority. I think habits are important because if the habits are aligned with the destination, now we're moving in the right direction.
Yeah.
To say it differently, like if we're firing up our map on our phone and we got to meet a friend and at a very specific restaurant for lunch or whatever, that pinpoint of where the restaurant is, that's the goal. And then the blue line is the habits that get to it, turn by turn by turn. This is exactly what you do. And I feel like if somebody only looks at habits, well, that could be helpful, but are they going in the direction you even want to go? Like left, right, but where are you headed? So I just think both are incredibly powerful. You want to have habits, but you want to do habits in a direction that is meaningful, and so that when you get to the end of that 1 year, 10 year, 50-year time horizon, you've gotten to a place where you're really happy and it's not just drifting around.
Yeah, I think that's right. I think almost in every one of these cases where there's some kind of dichotomy, it's a false dichotomy within the research. Sometimes it's like, man, the individual effort's what's important. And then there's other people who want to focus on, no, it's the group effort. It's the team effort's important. No, actually both are important. We know this. So I like how you tied those both together, because I do think actually goals and habits, you need both of them. You need both of them.
Yeah. Yeah. I want to go deeper on Atomic Habits, but we've got a couple more books. I will just say this, that, I mean, it's an amazing book. It really is good. And so many things stuck with me. I think a lot of people miss because they really focus in on the 4 make-its and all about the habit stuff. And that's the meat of the book. But man, I think there's some just meaty stuff in the opening about how he talks about habits form your identity, how we actually think about ourselves, and that we can actually change that over time. You and I have talked a lot about that lately, and I think he's got a sort of this concentric ring diagram that talks about how I think his one-liner, which is so good, is like every time you perform a habit is a vote for the identity of your future self that you want. Man, that I would love James, or maybe me someday, to write a book on just that stuff. It's so powerful.
Right. And so we're going to end with what's probably James's most famous, and this kind of ties a little bit to what we were just talking about, but let me end with this quote. You do not rise to the level of your goals. You fall to the level of your systems. That's probably his most famous line.
Yep.
You do not rise to the level of your goals. You fall to the level of your systems. You fall to the level of your habits.
Yep. And I'll even invent a addendum to that, and is that those systems or those habits become your identity. That
Yeah.
might be the most important. The stories we tell ourselves might be the most important thing we've got. Okay, let's go to our next book. I get to take the lead on this one, which we arm wrestled over this. We're going to talk about like how to stay on this last section, 3 more books, is all about how to stay on track ongoing. So we've understood all these other things we've talked about. Now, like, things are going to yank us off the path. We're going to get busy. Things are going to get hard. We're going to delay reaching out to somebody, and they move, and then we lost all our momentum because they're not at the company anymore. So the book one we want to talk about is The One Thing by Gary Keller and Jay Papasan. Jay's, of course, well, they're Bard Press authors, so you know it's good. And Jay's a close friend. You probably know Gary. I don't know Gary. But it's an incredible book. And there's a lot in there. The couple things that stood out to me were that by extreme focus, saying no to a whole bunch of things to say yes to a precious few things creates a domino effect. And there's actually visuals of dominoes in the book. I tend to think of exponential growth, given my mathematical and actuarial background. And I just think that the world is trying to confetti our time more and more and more every day. The meeting invites, the project teams, the cross-discipline and the matrixy organizations that a lot of people are in. There are just so many slicing up of our time into little 15 and 30-minute increments that it's hard to get things done. And what Jay and Gary talk about in this book is find a way to pick the precious few things that you want to focus on, whether it's the next 30 minutes, next 30 days, the next 30 years. Focus on those, make movement on those, and there's probably going to be some massive differentiation that happens if you do that over and over. Your thoughts?
Yeah, it's the story that I tell about writing the book, Mo, actually. That if I showed you a graph of number of reviews completed, maybe number of words written, it would have this really flat plateau for about 2 years. And it's because I didn't make it a one thing. I'd do a couple of reviews, 3 or 4 months would pass. I'd do a couple more reviews, 3 or 4 more months would pass. And I can actually almost show you to the day that I finally sat down and said, do I want to see this book in the world? Like, is it important enough that I'm going to focus the time to make it important? And literally the graph, it does the classic hockey stick where I went from probably writing a review once a month to writing a review once a week. And that, what took 2 years to write the first 20 reviews, I basically wrote the last 80 reviews in the same amount of time. And what was it? It was what you just talked about. It's a time block in the morning from 8 o'clock to 10 o'clock every day that I protected with all of my might. Of course, there were mornings that it didn't happen, but 95% of the mornings it did, where there was writing, there was reading going on every day. And that was the only way this book was going to get done. This wasn't just me sitting down with kind of conjuring up this. It required me picking books. It required me reading books. It required me kind of synthesizing those books. The amount of effort and focus and so many other things, so many other choices I could have made in those 4 years. And that once I made that choice and put that focus on it, it completely changed the trajectory of the project. I would not have finished the project had I not. And really, it was just mindset. It was just, this is going to be important and nothing else. There's going to be lots of no's. And I'm just shocked. And Gary tells this great story in the book of he would sit down with his executive team. He'd say, okay, tell me your top 5 things. And when we show up next week at our one-on-one, I'm going to want to hear about those 5 things. The people never finished the 5 things. He said, okay, tell me the 3 things you're going to do this week. And he literally tried 2 things and it didn't work. And he said, until I got it down to what's the one thing you're going to do between now and next week that's going to move things forward in a really powerful way, that's when he started seeing people making progress on those priorities, because it really requires that level of focus. And I think it's I love your word confetti, that we're putting confetti all over everything. But I think it's hard to say no. It's hard to are we really going to be that focused on this thing to see it through? just takes a lot of self-determination to do that. And so what's the BD lesson there?
You reminded of a story. I don't think I've thought of this in 10 years. I was back at this consulting firm before I left to start big 20 years ago this December. And a few years before that, I was leading it was like a Fortune 50 company client relationship, and I was leading that. One of the things we did at this firm is we did a bunch of consulting. We did a lot of outsourcing. So these were big, huge platform-like systems that included call centers and back office admin support, websites, and all kinds of different things. So it was a huge, huge outsourcing thing. And there was one particular type of outsourcing that I felt like there was 3 major ones that we did for clients, and we were doing 2 for a client. One wasn't a really big deal because they didn't have a lot of that, but one major one, and this other one. And I was working on trying to orchestrate how the client could buy this last big chunk of outsourcing. So these are really big dollar amounts, tens, hundreds of millions of dollars, depending on the scale. And one of the senior folks on my team, I can remember walking down the hall with him. He's like, they will never, ever buy that from us. And Todd, like, you want to have focus? I don't know. Tell me, you're my publisher. Now you know the secret. Like, tell me I can't do something. Like, that's okay. That's interesting. Barry, why do you say that? He's a great friend, so we could like have a dialogue like that. And he's like, they'll just never like our stuff isn't as good as who they're using now. That person doesn't like us. That runs that. All these other things. A year later, they were using that service, and it was just a matter of showing them that their current provider might have actually a better solution for that area, but the problem was all the employees had to call all these different places to get help. And while ours might be 5 or 10 or whatever % less good, putting them all together had a tremendous amount of value. And there was a whole bunch more to it. So anyway, there was something about focus where, in this case, Barry told me I couldn't do it. So that like created some focus, but I just started talking to the client about it more. Like, hey, we think we can offer a lot of value here. Can we do a workshop on this? Can we show you some capabilities? Can we introduce to other clients that put all these 3 things together? And just over and over and over, the focus of that's the destination. How can I get there? Certainly the meandering path didn't go how you would expect, but it was just like every week, I'm going to make a little more progress, a little more progress, a little more progress. And it worked out great for them. They were way better off, by the way.
I want to put one more thing next to that, because I think where you're drawing energy from for the thing that you're focused on can be really, really important. So maybe we're a little astray of what we're talking about in the one thing, but you really made me think of this, which is I would tell you that probably what caused the change in me going from, maybe I'll write this book to this book's really important, I need to do it. It changed from an external focus of someone telling me I should do it. Like I had a version of Barry kind of someone showing up saying, this is really important, you should do it. And I think that could be a really good initial motivator where you're like, yes, that's important. But I think there's only so much fuel from that kind of.
Yeah, it runs out fast. Yeah,
it does, right?
Yeah,
and like, what a great.
Let me jump in because the audience could feel like I had said something I didn't mean to say. That conversation with Barry is funny and it was interesting, but it wasn't the real motivator. The real motivator was like, it was an accelerant. It got me a little bit more excited for a while, to your point. But the real motivator was they needed our help and didn't know it. Yeah. So anyway, back to you.
No. And that's exactly where I was going to go next, Mo, which is that turning point was me saying, I'm doing this actually for the market, like for everybody. Like this book needs to exist in this world. And this is, gosh, it's the best use of my time. We had published a book. We hadn't talked about it very briefly in the prior interview. I'd done a version of a book like this about 15 years ago. We hadn't done much with it in the last 10 years. And I said, man, the marketplace, people need a book like this again that matches the current state of the world that we live in. So at first it was, okay, I'm going to do it because, but when it turned to, oh, I'm doing this for everyone else, I had limitless energy really to be able to do it. And so
Yeah.
I could hear that change in your story, Mo. And so but I think people noticing that's really important. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. One more thing, kick back to you, and you'll cover grit because there's 2 books left. Is Stefan Falk, a friend, he wrote a book called Intrinsic Motivation. He 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 taught me this, and I use it all the time. I use this all the time. Whenever I'm having trouble doing the thing that's right in front of me, and it could be like a long run on the weekend that's hot out, or writing an email that I was like, maybe it's like super detailed and I just don't want to do it, whatever. He has this thing called FEO, focus on exciting outcomes. And there's something that switches, at least in my mind, of when I think about the long run, if I think about going out and starting the run, that I will delay, I'll fiddle around the house. All of a sudden I'm doing laundry. Like I'll do all kinds of things that's not a priority because I don't want to do the hard thing. But if I focus on how great I'll feel at the end or how much I can eat tonight, because I'm going to go burn 900 calories on a long run in July in Atlanta or whatever. But if I focus on the exciting outcome, all of a sudden I start doing the hard work a little sooner. And I think the one thing, if sometimes one thing kind of things are hard to do, not always, but a lot of times our priorities are at least getting started and I think if we can focus on the outcome and not the initial activity, sometimes that'll get us, at least for me, I get going faster. So grit.
I think that nicely ties back to the habit pieces. I think
Yeah,
we can
it
lean
does.
into some of that habit work you were just talking about.
Yeah.
Let's talk about grit. Angela
Yep.
Duckworth.
Yep.
My guess is your folks are going to know this. Like it's such mainstream knowledge now, but let's just make sure we hit on the important pieces. Grit is the tendency not to abandon tasks in the face of obstacles. Did we just talk about that maybe? Right? How do we build grit? And the research is super clear on this. Angela found that National Geographic Spelling Bee champions, West Point athletes, Navy SEALs, percentage chance you're going to graduate from college. Like there's a whole range of activities that grit is actually the best indicator of whether or not you're going to complete and graduate from any one of those programs. And, I know my kids now, having gone through elementary and high school, like it's built into the curriculum now. That like I can hear them talking in grit methodology because people know it's important. I think I always keep in mind that she says that grit is the combination of, you need both, the combination of passion and perseverance. So what I heard was, and I know this about you, I heard the perseverance part in the long run piece. I heard the perseverance. I heard you know what, I'm going to focus on the long-term thing. I'm going to get going. I also know athletics and fitness is something that's a passion of yours. It's something you actually engage in very deeply. You hire coaches to help you out with it. Like, so knowing that you need both those pieces to be gritty in those activities, I think is really important. So tell me again, tell me the BD person here, version here, because sometimes we run into that. Maybe perseverance is there, but passion, is that why I went into professional services? Is that why I became a lawyer or an accountant or a consultant to do BD? I don't know.
Yeah, I think, well, it comes in big time. I think one because I get this just luxury of oftentimes getting to meet the people who are the very, very best at their organization. So like I was working with investment bankers this week, and we prompt this a lot. We'll say, hey, I want you to bring what we'll call a cultural steward into the class because I'll be teaching from the front of the room. Could be me, one of our other trainers. And I want them in the room. We tell them exactly where to sit, front left or front right, so that we can call on them, get their perspective. And if they're in one of the front corners, they can just turn 30 degrees, address the whole group. Everybody can hear them because they're projecting across the whole room. Like we have a whole system around this. So I get to meet these people. And every time, I'm telling you, the people that are the most successful, we have a drink afterwards, we go to dinner, or we're at the dinner with the whole group or whatever, and we get unpacked like, hey, tell me your story. How'd you get into this? All this stuff. Man, grit is always part of their curve. And I think what's interesting around business development and what they will tell me around grit is a couple things. One is they treat business development as a priority. So they want to learn it. They want to get better at it. They ask for feedback. They lean into tough conversations. They tell me what I can do better. They set up a win from any loss. So set up their next win from any loss. So they They dig back in. If they don't win what they want, they learn directly from the client what they can do better, ask them how they can help them in the future. And I think the other thing is they think, it's always my move. And it's like, there's always a move to make. I can always be helpful. And if the person hasn't answered my 4 emails, I'm going to find another way, to get their attention. So like, that's all the perseverance part. If you think about the passion part, I think of one great friend and one of the top, maybe the top performing professional or service-based business developer in the world, a guy named Mike. And he has this saying around this. He says, if my organization can help the client, I feel like it's my moral obligation to present us in the best way to them in a way that we can be helpful. And he has literally sold billions and billions of dollars of consulting. And his passion is making an impact on the world. His passion is leveraging these amazing human beings and resources that he's got his organization to be able to help others. So he's got all the perseverance stuff, and he's got all the passion stuff. And man, when you stick those together, you just keep going, and over the long haul, you grow incredibly.
Okay, so I think we're talking about the same Mike. So I want to tell one more Mike story, and you're going to need to fill in the details for this, because I think this is the passion side of it, but it may not sound like the passion side to some people. I believe Mike also tells a story that in his briefcase, there's a piece of paper for every one of his major clients. And on that piece of paper are what he believes are their biggest problems that they're working on. And that it's his job to be the foremost expert on understanding those problems in the context of the client. Do I have that right? Would you add something else to it? Because to me, I think you might think, oh, the passion piece is I need to get good at selling. Like, that's why I'm going to, I need to be really good at selling. Like, that's the passion piece you're talking about, Mo and Todd. No, that's actually not what we're talking about. We're actually talking about get as passionate as possible on the problems that that your clients are working on. That's where you're going to find the grit. Is that right?
That's exactly right. And that's why you and I titled a chapter in Give to Grow, fall in love with their problem. And the passion that Mike has is the passion to figure out what do they say, but what do they not even know yet? Like, to figure out from his perspective, what are the top 10 or so priorities that they should have? Many of those do not involve the expertise of his firm at all. Doesn't matter. He's really starting with great empathy from sitting in their chair, metaphorically, to figure out what would I be worried about if I were them. Once he's got that, then his passion, his moral obligation, as he would put it, is to find ways to be helpful to them, whether it involves his organization or not. And he said simply by writing that list, that's sort of his trigger to be able to think deeply about what they need, but then figure out what his actions should be.
Yeah. I think it's actually a good transition into the last book.
I do too. And I love the order of this, by the way. So like, dig in, and I think also just share, why did we put this last? Because I think it's interesting.
Yeah. So the last book is Coaching Habit by Michael Bungay-Stainer. I think it's the most effective book to figure out how to quickly go from 0 to being 80% effective at coaching.
Yep.
It's a short list of questions.
It's so
He teaches them very quickly. I don't even want to tell you like in the review for this book, I don't tell you the questions because I want you to go read the book that badly. Like, so tell me why you like the book, because I think it fits into this, what we were just talking about, literally with Mike, but it applies to so many other situations that I think BD folks find themselves in.
Yeah, well, I liked it for a lot of reasons. I mean, one, I just like Michael. He's just an amazing human being. But I think the reason why I liked it is because it has so much utility. It packs such a punch for, like you said, like the size of the book. Like, you'd almost put it in your back pocket. It's so small. It's tiny. And it's this fast read. And you're like, oh my God, it changed my whole life. And it's tiny. Yeah, I've got it right here.
Right. I mean, so like size of my hand, little 5x7.
Yeah.
And it's 200 some pages.
Yeah. And it reads even, I swear, faster than that, because there's a lot of pages with big font and this is the question and whatever. Yeah. So the reason I liked it beyond just the utility and the leverage it gives you is, I think for a long time, I've made the mistake of doing other people's work for them. So just like our team's pretty big at big. If you include the whole team, include your couple dozen people, well, it's really easy for people to say, hey, yeah, I'm happy to write you a draft of the email. What should be in it? That happened today. And I've flipped that back and said, happy to tell you later, but what do you think ought to be in it? You know? And I just feel like it makes me think a little bit about Ashley Tim, I can't think of his last name, but he's got a similar book I like to put alongside Coaching Habit, which is the answer is a question. And he's got a bunch of research-based and evidence-based, it's a longer book, but ideas of when you're coaching people to ask questions, and it's similar to Michael's book. But anyway, I guess my point is, I'm being too longer-winded, is it's easy to do other people's work for them because it's faster. It's harder in the short term to ask questions, to build coaching, to spend the time building somebody's skills, but it doesn't take long at all. And if you're truly coaching in the way Michael talks about, their skills go up so fast that you're not running around doing other people's work for them, and they're actually now helping you succeed. And it just lets you scale. The concepts in that book let people scale in a way that they just would never do if they're always like doing the fastest thing for today, but not the fastest thing for this year.
Yeah, I think for me, the outside of the questions themselves, one of the things that he says that I really think about a lot now is always ask what questions. Your questions should start with the word what, because the trouble is if you use a why question, why did you blah, 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 you're going to hear some story. You're going to hear an excuse. You're going to hear a story. You're going to hear a vaguely kind of some interpretation for the situation that they've conjured, for that coaching situation. When you're actually much more interested in is, what were you thinking at that point? What's the next thing you could do? It's much more concrete. It's much more direct. It's better than a why or a how. So I always try to now only use, and it's hard because I think we're programmed. We think these other things are going to help us get to the understanding that we're looking for when we're in a coaching conversation with someone. But what questions have so much more power and leverage, frankly, than I think others do.
That's really good. I'd forgotten that about the book. This is a book.
And it's exactly what you did, Mo. Like in that example you just gave, it was a what question.
Yeah, it was. We had a tough situation like about 2 weeks ago where we actually let a client down, and relatively significantly. It was a logistical snafu. It was a perfect storm of two people that were handing a project off. Literally at the same time, we were changing systems that keep track of all the to-dos, and whatever, a session we led did not go well. And this never happens, Todd. Like, I can't even remember the last time it happened. And so we did not handle it well because luckily, in a weird way, we don't have a go-to move of when we mess something up. but we didn't handle it well. And I was working with the team on, okay, what do we do next? And by now we've mostly rectified the situation, but it's all going to be fine. And by how we reacted later on, like we're clearly showing that the client's important to us and all these things. These things happen, right? Welcome to the human race. So one of the things that I was trying to do using Michael's principles in the figuring out what we're going to do about this little mess we found ourselves in is it was important for me, a leader, is to say, hey, I think there's 4 major things we need to do. Because I've just got 30, 40 years experience of this. Like I do know the ideas. What I didn't know is like, in this exact case, what should we do? I wasn't close to it. I wasn't leading the project. I wasn't leading the logistical part of it, all that. So I could give like, hey, I think these are the 4 major things that we need to do. What do you all think we need to do for each of these? What's the next step? What's the next step? What's the plan? How are we going to stay on top of this? We're going to get busy next week. How do we make this a priority? Like all kinds of different questions around the what we do and the how that we keep it going. I'm not using how here, but it was all questions. And frankly, it was a way better response than we would have done if I would have just come in guns a-blazing and said built all that out myself.
So here's I think the one thing maybe one more piece on this topic, Mo, is that I feel like we jumped right in as 100% like loving advocates of coaching and coaching questions. And lots of people can come up in lots of other styles of how they communicate, what they've been taught in terms of how managers talk to reportees or how you talk to clients. So I don't want to miss the case that I think the argument we're making is that this methodology as serving with sort of a coaching stance can be a really powerful method to actually make better progress on the problems we're talking about. And so I'm just going to I'm going to read Michael's quote here, and then maybe we'll close this one up and then maybe close up the interview. Yep. But here's what he says. Coaching is a foundational skill for every manager and leader. When people make coaching an everyday way of working, they create more focus, more courage, and more resilience. They help others and themselves work less hard and have more impact. Does that sound right?
It does. And my add to that is, of all the skills we've talked about, it's the one that can scale yourself so much faster. In the short term, it's almost always faster to do something yourself. It is not true if that thing's done twice. It's certainly not true if that thing's going to be done 12 times in the next month or 50 in the year. So coaching is this accelerant to a team growing in a way that I can't think of anything else. I think this was like the secret to really, really having a big impact is coaching, of all the books that we talked about. And I think that's the perfect close. Todd, yeah, this has been great. We covered a dozen or so books. There's 100 in here. I think this is a neat book because you can just you can read the whole thing A to Z. You can open it up, close your eyes, and point at something, and you're gonna get something valuable. And you made it a joy to read, which I think is hard to do in a book like this, but you really have. Where should people go grab it?
It's available everywhere that bookstores are sold. Amazon, Barnes & Noble, your local indie, bookshop.org, all the places. It's widely available, easy to get.
I love it. Todd, thanks for being on the show. You're a joy. This has been fun.
Thanks. Thanks for having me, Mo.